I want to begin by sharing with you the results of a study. This study indicated that test scores are up, that students are scoring above the national average now in reading and mathematics, above the national average everywhere. In other words, tests are being used by states for PR purposes, and the data is being manipulated to make the results come out favorable. And though these tests are very scientific in the quantifiable sense of scientific, and they do provide data, data must always be interpreted. And the data is being interpreted, as always, in a vested interest way. And this is one of the reasons, of course, why we need critical thinking. We will never be able to solve our problems by simply turning over the important decisions to those who collect data. Because you can always collect data in such a way as to arrive at the conclusion that you want, and this is typically what happens in large-scale testing in the United States and other countries when that testing is conducted by people who have a vested interest involved, and almost inevitably where money and power and status is involved, vested interests are involved as well. And so it's important that we realize that we don't need fundamentally to establish quantitative measures that will be able to tell us what the quality of education is, because no surely quantitative matters can tell us that. Assessment always has to take place, bringing values into the picture and bringing an interpretative scheme into the picture, and therefore represents a product of reason as well as a product of fact. And all of us then need to attend to the role of critical thinking in assessment. Nothing that I've said denigrates assessment. Assessment is absolutely essential. We must be responsible to the public. We must demonstrate to the public in reasonable ways that they're getting a dollar's worth of education for a dollar's worth of investment. But this is not going to be demonstrated fundamentally by mathematics and hard data alone. There must rather be that informed perspective on education which presents the results in a way that give the public citizenry insight into the nature of the educational process, into the difficulties that are inherent in it, and into the values which of necessity underlie it and are an important and significant part of how we understand when we're succeeding and when we're not succeeding. Minimal competency testing, for example, makes the assumption that we can predict in advance what is going to happen to people and what exactly they're going to need in these circumstances, and we're going to be able to test for that and tell whether they've reached these minimal levels of competency. The fact of the matter is, predicting the future is a very difficult thing to do, and when you do it, it's only in the most general terms. And it is not the sort of thing that is easily translated into a quantitative measure at a certain grade level where each student must come up to a certain point in this quantitative measure or they have failed to achieve minimal competency. As Harvey Siegel so eloquently does in a chapter in his recent book, Educating Reason, he points out how an ideal of education is inherent in every system of education and in some sense, in every testing program which we might set up. And what we've got to do is use our critical thinking about these educational ideals that are often inherent in instruction and the values that are inherent in that instruction to find out whether the values being assumed are the values that we want assumed. whether the values being furthered are the values we want to be furthered.